Hello everyone, welcome to Winthrop in the World. I'm Paul Baskin, and with us today is Aaron Toffler. Aaron is the Executive Director of the Massport Community Advisory Committee, which advises Massport on issues that are of interest or affect the towns around Boston area, or actually out as far as what, Worcester?
Right, we are a legislatively created body, oversight body, that has representatives from 35 communities that are impacted by Massport's operations. So we have 41 representatives because the city of Boston has 7.
Okay, right. So 7 for Boston, 41 for all the other towns?
7 from Boston and 1 from each of the other 34 municipalities that are in our group, yep.
Right, and your vice chairman is actually from Winthrop, is that right?
The vice chair, since I've been part of Massport Community Advisory Committee, has been Jerry Falbo, who's a Winthrop resident, yes.
Well, thank you for coming. Obviously, Massport is very important to us here in Winthrop because of the airport. Yep. There's obviously a lot of people who like being next to Boston for the advantages it brings and also don't like being next to the airport. And I guess a lot of questions to ask about that, but maybe a big picture question to ask is like, how realistic is it to expect people in Winthrop to get relief from Logan when Logan is here? It's been here for what, almost a century in some
about
form?
70 years-ish.
Yeah, so I mean, is it realistic for people in Winthrop to really expect Logan's going to really bend it too much to what we need, and especially the way the federal government works? The federal government has generally pretty powerful control over airport operations, so there's not a lot we could even do if we wanted the state to do something. So is it sort of like a lot of banging your head against the wall kind of stuff, or what do you really do?
Some days it feels like that, and you're right that there is sort of a limited amount of influence that either the state or the local government can exert over Massport. In terms of flight paths, that's regulated by the FAA, so we've had some success in getting some flight procedures changed so that they impact fewer people on the ground.
Right.
We have the benefit of being right on the water, so we can direct some of the flights over water instead of population centers. Right. But realistically, we're sort of nibbling at the margins. Massport does pay attention to the noise that's created by aviation. Over different communities, which I think is probably one of the largest concerns for people in the near-in communities in particular. But they also have, they create a lot of traffic. There's a lot of ground access to the airport that we try to encourage them and ask them to mitigate some of the impacts of that ground transportation. There are obviously air quality impacts, and we're doing an air quality project right now that I spoke to the town council about a few weeks ago. I'm happy to get into a little bit more today if you'd like.
Yes.
But you're right. Largely, the operations at a federally regulated airport are in the purview of the federal government. Right.
So yeah, the air monitors is definitely something I want to ask you about, but since you brought up, let's talk about that, because yes, you were before the town council here in Winthrop 2 or 3 weeks ago, I believe, roughly, and you did talk about some monitors being put into Winthrop and maybe going to be expanding that quite a bit. So I guess if you could tell people what exactly is that about, and what difference is it going to make ultimately if the airport, if the federal government essentially gets to do what it wants in big scope anyway?
Well, so with air quality, that's regulated largely by the Environmental Protection Agency, so also a federal agency. We think that air quality impacts, particularly from ultrafine particulate matter, which is the very smallest particles that are emitted from combustion engines.
Which we're finding out a lot more about the health effects of those too.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of scientific literature. I'm not a scientist myself, but there's a lot of scientific literature about the impact that ultrafines have on people. They're very small, so they get into the body more easily than some of the particles that are currently regulated. So we have set up at the moment we have 4 air quality monitors that are set up around Logan Airport.
In Winthrop? Or?
Not all of them are in Winthrop. 1 is in Winthrop, 3 are in East Boston.
Okay.
At the moment, so we're currently collecting data. You can go to our website right now and see the data that's being collected in real time right on our website, massportcac.org. And that will give you a sense of how much air pollution you're being exposed to at different times of the day.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that anything's going to get done about that right away, and certainly I understand that there are folks in Winthrop, in Chelsea, in East Boston who have been sort of studied for a long period of time, not just airport impacts, but traffic impacts and Tobin Bridge impacts and the rest of that. So what can we do about it is it's a long-term proposal. First, we have to know how much air pollution there is. That's the first step, and that's sort of the step that we're in now, the phase that we're in now. The next thing with ultrafines, what we have to do is get the federal government to recognize that this is a pollutant of concern and that it actually does have health impacts on the local population, and then to adopt a regulatory standard that would be protective of human health.
Right.
That's not going to happen in the next year. It might not happen in the next 3 years, but the first important step in that process is to gather the data and to understand what the impacts are. Now, it doesn't mean that these are not regulated anywhere in the world. The World Health Organization does have what's called a good practice statement, which is a level that they set, which they say is, if you exceed that level, it has negative impacts on human health.
Right. If
you're below that level, you are relatively, okay.
Right. So I was going to ask you about the Europe comparison, but you brought that up. And are people living near in maybe a comparable situation in Europe in a better place than maybe we are here in Winthrop?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in European law and certainly not European environmental law, but I know that the World Health Organization, we are, part of that.
Right.
Part of that organization, and so in theory, those standards would apply to us as well.
Okay.
We happen to have an environmental protection agency that's, authorized to set these standards. At the moment, you might have heard recently that the EPA has decided that the value of a human life is $0, which is not an encouraging sign in terms of getting some regulation on the books for any new air pollutants.
And the reason that matters, that's not just like a rhetorical thing you're saying, because when you actually sort of scientifically calculate the harm that some of these pollutants do to the human body, maybe the medical costs and all that kind of stuff, you can sort of calculate out at what point you're going to allow certain things.
Right. It's like it's probably a similar process that insurance companies would use, or that you would litigate in a court of law. If somebody loses their life, how much was that life worth? And so in the air pollution context, it's like if we can avoid a certain amount of harm and a certain number of deaths by cleaning up the air to a certain standard, how much is that worth?
So the current administration in Washington is saying 0. What was the number? Was there a number before?
I don't know what the number was before, but they considered, they don't say exactly 0. They say that that's not a consideration.
It's not a consideration.
Number of lives saved is not a consideration anymore. So that's being sort of put out into the world as $0.
But again, I'm just thinking of the Europe comparison. The same plane takes off and lands in Boston, and it goes over to Paris or London or whatever. The same plane. So what's the difference then?
It's the same plane. It's the same impacts, and it's just a different regulatory system that they're functioning in when they go from Europe to the United States or the other direction.
Is there any way in which you, looking at the numbers, or your advisory committee looking at numbers, can say, or is able to say so far, look, what you're doing right here is crossing a line that you can sort of say, well, I don't know what it could be, there should be 10 fewer flights out of Logan a day or something. Is there some way of sort of bringing this down to real world for people?
Yeah, that's the hope. I think that we are operating in a system, and Massport is operating in a system where they are, as we alluded to earlier, pretty tightly regulated by the FAA.
Right.
They comply with all FAA regulations.
Right.
We are in what they call attainment, which means that our air quality around this area is in compliance with the Clean Air Act standards. Right. So there's not something that we're going to be doing with that. To their great credit, though, the Department of Environmental Protection, the State Department of Environmental Protection has started to monitor for ultrafine particulate matter as well in 4 locations around the state.
Yeah.
3 right around here.
Right.
Not in Winthrop, but near here. So, I think the MCAC, working with some nonprofit groups, working with the state, is in a position, I hope, to push the regulatory system to adopt standards for ultrafines. Is that going to mean that you're going to have fewer flights flying over Winthrop in the near term? It's not. I have to be honest about that. Right. There may be some things that we're able to do in the near term in terms of flight path changes, but I think we've largely made the changes that are available to us. And so the flight patterns are probably going to stay what they are at the moment.
So this, maybe look at it more as this is an effort. Your group is more about trying to hold things from getting any worse than they are. Is that kind of the way to think of it?
And I think it's to say that there are other pollutants other than what they're called criteria pollutants that the EPA currently regulates that are having impacts on people's health.
Right.
Right. So we're saying, look, you have to seriously consider adding ultrafine particulate matter to the list of criteria pollutants so that you can protect people's health. That's the goal of the Environmental Protection Agency.
So you mentioned there's 4 monitors, one in Winthrop and 3 others nearby having to do with Logan. And then did you also mention there's 4 monitors statewide that are doing some other kind of hunting for pollutants?
Yep, I believe there are more than 4 monitors statewide, but the 4 that came online recently were specifically targeted at measuring ultrafine particulate matter. So I give the DEP, our state DEP, great credit because they are not mandated to measure these pollutants, but they know that they're harmful to human health. And so working with the East Boston Rep Modero, they got some money and they have deployed some monitors in the East Boston area.
And did you mention there's plans for more monitors in Winthrop than just the one?
Well, that depends on what happens with some of the other monitors that are coming online. Yeah. So the City of Boston has a grant program, and they have funded some more deployment of more monitors.
I see. That's a state grant program?
It's a City of Boston grant program. So that money has to be spent in the City of Boston.
I see.
Our jurisdiction is broader than just the City of Boston. So if the City of Boston grant results in more monitors going into East Boston, it's possible that we would take our currently located in East Boston monitors and bring them over to Winthrop or put them in Chelsea or in Roxbury or one of the other communities that's served by our committee.
I see. Just one thing, the 3A housing issue in Winthrop is a big deal. I don't know if that's on your radar at all, but I mean, it seems to affect our ability to get state funding. Is there any thought that might affect our ability to get these monitors more thoroughly into Winthrop?
No, that wouldn't have any impact.
That would not. Okay. What about comparisons? I mean, for instance, so to ballpark it, again, we're talking about monitors in the Logan area, statewide. I assume the statewide ones are not looking for airport pollutants per se, right?
Not specifically. I mean, ours will pick up pollutants from traffic. This is a very difficult part of the conversation because it's very hard to attribute pollution to different sources.
Right.
So we have there's a lot of roadways around here. There are some power plants. There are a number of things that could be causing this. But the signal that we're getting in Winthrop and other locations in East Boston are pretty clearly linked to either the airport or Conley Terminal, which is also a Massport facility.
Conley Terminal is a shipping facility?
It's the big cargo terminal in Boston.
Yeah, we're near the cruise ships going in and out of as well?
Right. They're close by.
Close by.
Very, very nearby.
So what I was wondering then is, so I just want to be clear, so the monitors in Winthrop and the ones around Logan, they are I guess dumb to the source. So how do you know then that the majority, is that what you're thinking, is the majority of the pollutants that they're picking up are in fact related to the airport?
I am not going to say the majority, but I am going to say that when the wind blows from the direction of the airport to our monitor, you see spikes in the readings. And we are working with some scientists at the Olin College of Engineering who help us interpret the data. Because as I said, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to go on Winthrop Cable Access TV and say, this is absolutely from Logan Airport. But our scientists help us to analyze the data and tell stories from the data that they're seeing.
So what's their best assessment of what I mean, again, I realize you're talking about spikes from wind blowing, but sort of on a year-round average, the air pollution in Winthrop, what's your best sense of where it's coming from primarily, or even in percentages?
So, well, the monitor in Winthrop has only been deployed for about 5 months. So before we start drawing conclusions like that,
Yeah.
we'd like to have 1 year of data
Yeah.
so that we can, ideally what we would do is we would look at the operational data from Logan.
Right.
We know when planes take off. We know which runways the planes are using.
Right.
And then we can see the spikes, and we know what direction the wind is coming from.
Right.
So when we see those spikes, we can say, okay, look, there happened to be a plane departing from the runway that impacts Winthrop. The wind was blowing in the direction from the airport. Our monitor picked up a big spike, 30 seconds later.
Right.
So we'll be able to make those, draw those conclusions based on the data that we have.
Okay.
Once it's been up and running.
But so even 5 months is not enough for you to even give your best preliminary idea of that right now?
What I can say is that Logan has an impact on the air quality in Winthrop.
Well, part of the reason I think we're asking is because Logan, I think we've established we probably can't control but a lot, and some of the other things we can. So I'm just asking whether maybe that might be an indicator that, okay, Logan can't do much about that, but maybe it's teaching us other things that we can do something more about.
So I do think that's I think it's a sort of pursue all avenues at the same time.
Yeah.
So, just looking at some of Massport's environmental documentation from the last couple of years, 51 million cars come through Logan Airport each year.
Right.
That's a lot of cars.
Yeah.
Right. So, and they are working on getting people out of their private vehicles and into buses or onto public transit.
Right.
They're experimenting right now with remote terminals at some of their Logan Express facilities in Framingham and down in the South Shore. So they're doing some good work.
Yeah, I just saw one in Framingham just started, right? I guess they're doing TSA screening out in Framingham?
Well, that's gonna pilot in, I believe, June of 2026.
Okay.
So in a couple of months, there's a lot of logistical things they have to work out.
Yeah.
They have to figure out how to get the screening, how to keep the passengers secure, how to get them to the airport on the right side of security when they get there.
Right.
But they're doing some really good work in that regard, and I think the more that we can encourage them to look for avenues to reduce private vehicle traffic.
Right.
And then, there's going to be work with airlines, I think, on technology, on their engine technology,
Right.
to try to make the planes both cleaner and quieter.
Right, although that's clearly not a Massachusetts-specific issue at all.
Not a Massachusetts-specific issue. Right.
But as far as the plane, I mean, I sort of wonder too, you see the planes, when they take off, it seems like they have an option to either go left, right, or center. Mm-hmm. Is there any of that going on to sort of get them to do more of the direction that gets them? I mean, I realize people in maybe South Boston don't want you to bend over that way either, but is there, what's the sort of state of play on that?
I mean, there are very defined flight paths that these planes have to follow.
Yeah.
And so depending on the ultimate destination, they go either left, right, or center, as you said.
Right.
I don't believe that the FAA is interested in shifting traffic from one community to another. That's sort of a zero-sum game. They don't really like playing that game.
Yeah.
But I do think that we've done almost as much as we can in terms of changing flight paths to minimize the number of people who are impacted by overflights.
Yeah.
But the flight paths, a couple of years ago, they went through this RNAV procedure. The flight paths have been become much tighter.
Okay.
And so fewer people are getting the noise,
Right.
but if you're getting the noise, you get a lot of it.
Right, right. So noise, and we've been talking a lot about pollution, that's critically important, but noise we haven't really touched on a lot. And I realize another part of the situation they've been talking about in the town here in Winthrop is I'll say briefly, my understanding is that there used to be a program for insulation, windows, and that so forth.
Yes.
That sort of, I guess, faded away, and now they're talking about reviving it. Maybe you could sort of give the data.
So it's in full swing right now. They did a pilot project starting in 2024, I believe.
Okay.
And they have evaluated houses that are within a certain decibel level contour from the airport to be eligible for the program.
Right.
And I believe they have just finished about 10 houses in East Boston and Winthrop.
Okay.
And they are looking to do another program
Right.
of maybe 20 more houses. And then they're going to, hopefully, if the funding continues from the federal government, because the federal government pays for 80% of that program,
Okay.
and Massport pays for 20%.
Right.
but they will continue to insulate or soundproof or re-soundproof.
So is it the case that there was a big effort, a few decades ago to really do a lot of this and it kind of went away, or what's the way to say it?
I think that's probably the
That's
right
the way to say it,
it.
okay.
Yeah, it went away.
Well, the other thing that sort of, if you're looking at you just said the number's 10. I mean, that's a minuscule amount of homes. I mean, there's
Right.
a lot of homes in Winthrop that are affected by noise and pollution.
Right.
I mean, is the conclusion to take from that is that that's really going to be a fairly minor program, even if it gets funded?
I think Massport has plans to expand the program,
Yeah.
and they're looking at this as a pilot program. And I will say, a couple of years ago, under the former CEO at Massport, they did write a letter to the FAA asking for homes that had been soundproof before 1993 to be allowed to be eligible for the program again.
Okay.
So they are trying to expand the program.
Right.
And I think some of that depends on what the federal government says.
And obviously the federal government's in the news all the time these days in terms of its attitudes towards spending and certain things. Do you have a sense as to what degree that fundamentally extends to this kind of an effort? Whether it sounds like the administration has been fairly quiet on that topic or been fairly outspoken in terms of its intent here?
Yeah, at the moment, what we hear from Massport is that the funding is available for the program to continue and hopefully expand.
Yeah, okay. As far as the actual, then that gets to the question of what constitutes loud enough. I mean, my basic understanding is the numbers in terms of what's considered to be an allowable noise level under federal law is quite loud. I mean, it would be much louder than would be allowed in town by any other. Somebody just set up a generator next to your house or something like that. Mm-hmm. That would be very loud. That wouldn't be allowed, but would be here. Maybe you can sort of, if you can, a basic understanding of the decibel levels and what's considered to be allowable under noise from the airport versus noise allowed, in a municipality?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the municipal rules would be.
I think it's 45 decibels.
45?
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, as a daytime thing, yes.
So the contour, what happens every year, Massport has 30, I think, noise monitors deployed around the airport. They, using the data from those monitors and from modeling, because a lot of this is done through modeling, they draw a 65 DNL, so day-night level,
which is decibels
contour.
on an average throughout the day.
Exactly,
yes.
and so that's the key point here. Yeah. You're talking about averaging over the course of a day.
Right.
And so
if a plane comes by your house at 90 decibels and then it goes away for a minute, that's 45 on average.
Right. Right. And so the contour is not necessarily representative of people's lived experience with noise. Yeah. But this is the way the regulations are. A couple of years ago, the FAA put out for comment a reevaluation of their noise policy. Okay. And we submitted a letter which essentially said, look, the metric that you're using to gauge what is impacting people's ability to function and use their homes in the way that they want to is not the right metric. Yeah. And the level is too high. Right. The FAA has not done a lot with that information yet. Right. It's been several years, and we have not heard back really about where they are in the process of responding to that. So
I think that people outside of a place like Winthrop would look at it and say, you chose to move to Winthrop. The airport's been here a very long time. Mm-hmm. Be quiet. That's reflected in your home value. That's reflected in your choices. Mm-hmm. What's your basic answer to that kind of argument? Yeah,
that's an argument that's made in a lot of different arenas. This sort of idea of coming to the nuisance. Mm-hmm. I've been working on airport issues for a few decades now, and I'm somewhat sympathetic to that argument, but there are a lot of people whose families have been in this area for generations, and did predate the airport. Yeah. I know when I did work in East Boston, there were a lot of folks who remember, the Wood Island Park and using that, that beautiful Frederick Law Olmsted designed park was taken over by the state to build this airport. Right. And people have not forgotten that. And so my opinion is that no matter where you choose to live, you should have clean air,
Right.
you should have clean water. That's, to me, that's sort of a baseline condition. And so I will continue to do everything that I can and use the MCAC to exert whatever leverage we can to make that happen.
So in the context of rising sea levels, there's talk about buying out homes because you're just realizing that you just can't keep bailing out certain houses in certain locations. Is there any thought that that's maybe an analogous move needs to be made with regard to an airport, where you just say, well, look, that's right where the flight path is. That's going to be where the flight path is. We'll buy your house out. I mean, is that even in the conversation with anywhere?
I have not heard that conversation happen. I thought you were going to say move the airport. But,
well, I think there are people who would like that too,
Yeah,
but that seems less realistic than maybe moving a certain number of, I don't know, I'm just asking.
I will say that Massport is right now undergoing a strategic planning effort for the next 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
And that document, that strategic plan, will be open for public comment starting in the next probably week or two.
Okay.
So if people want to make comments about the direction that the airport is going, what Massport has planned in terms of expansion or accommodating current levels of traffic, now's the time to do that.
Yeah. Okay. If the society were designed less car-centric and there were more trains, would that be a way of sort of reducing the flow out of Logan?
Absolutely.
Is that being talked about?
Yeah, and I think this is actually a conversation I had this morning with our board chair. Again, in Massport's environmental filings, they talk about how many flights from Logan to New York.
Yeah.
What percentage of their flights. It's a pretty high percentage.
Right.
I mean, it's not the majority of them, but it's a decent number of flights. If we could get people out of planes and onto high-speed rail, that would make a big difference.
For a town like Winthrop.
And, there was a gentleman who used to be on the board of Massport who recently wrote an op-ed in the Globe that talked about regionalization, airport regionalization, and trying to shift some of the traffic away from Logan and into Worcester and up to New Hampshire and down to TF Green in Rhode Island.
Right.
So that's another possibility that I think we need to talk about instead of focusing, growth on Logan.
No, that sounds good for Winthrop. Wouldn't people in those areas have even more of a claim to say, well, that wasn't the situation we bought our house under?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. My understanding, again, is that the folks out around Worcester Airport would like to see that facility used more.
Okay.
And so they want more investment by Massport out there. And I do think Massport is investing in making that airport better and easier to access and more functional.
Yeah.
But I think the more that we can do, the more relief people around Logan might get.
Yeah, I mean, the Worcester Airport's not near a highway or transit, right?
No, it's not easy to get to.
It's not easy to get to. We're almost out of time, but there's at least a couple of things I want to ask you. One, we talked a lot about health impacts, but is there anybody doing a health study of the people of Winthrop to, not just check the air pollution and the noise, but see how it's actually affecting them, whether like through their medical records, seeing if there's any kind of common diseases or any kind of problems that are common to the people of Winthrop, maybe that you're not seeing elsewhere?
It's a great point, and it's something that we want to do. We have a very limited, capabilities.
Right.
I'm the only full-time person working with the organization. We don't have health people, but we are trying to link the operational data that we have with health data, because as one of our members continually reminds me, it's going to be the health data that moves the needle. It's not going to be, hey, there's too much noise, hey, this is bothering me.
Right.
It's going to be actual impacts on mortality and morbidity. So I know that Boston University has done a bunch of work in that area. I think Tufts has done some work in that area. And probably some of the other universities around Northeastern does some work there. But I think that's a good point. What we need to do is look at the operational data and the health data, and try to draw some conclusions.
So if there was because I grew up in the Stoneham area with the cancer cluster, famously in the movie Civil Action. Yeah, I grew up right near that. And the people didn't know about the cancer cluster till afterward.
Right.
If there was a cancer cluster going on, and right now Winthrop or some other thing, we wouldn't know it, right? Because of, that could be reasonably attributed to the airport. We wouldn't actually know that's going on. Is that fair to say?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you find these things out after the fact, right? But there's, again, it would be very difficult, I think, to link it directly to Logan Airport activity,
Yeah.
just because there are so many other factors involved.
Right.
But so, ideally what you would do is you would have a study that could sort of, focus on one source of emissions.
Yeah.
That it's very complicated to do and beyond
Right.
beyond my expertise.
I'm going to try and fit in one more because it's so visible to people here in Winthrop, which is the extension of the runway. Is it 27?
27, right?
Yeah, so they just they had the runway shut down, which was a nice break for us for like 3 months here.
Right.
Was it 3 months? I don't remember the time, but anyway, but they added on a much longer extension, and Massport has argued that's not really a runway extension, that's really a safety move. Is that semantics? Because it seems like, yes, in the sense it's not an extension of runway in the sense that it's for protection in case of an overrun, but it's also pretty clearly a required element of the runway. So therefore, you could look at it either way, I suppose. Which way do you look at it?
Yeah, I think that's a safety feature. That's something that the FAA wants them to do, is requiring them to do, actually. And it is for, as you say, just in case a plane can't stop.
Right.
This is engineered material that will stop a plane before it goes into the harbor.
Yeah.
Does it look like an extension of the runway? Yes, because it's longer, than what the runway is. But technically, the runway stops at the same place.
Yeah.
It's just there's an added safety feature.
No, but it's required space that should have been there all along. It sounds like, in a sense.
You could argue that it is certainly taking up part of the water sheet.
Yeah.
And so in that sense,
Yeah.
it does extend further.
Right.
But it's a safety issue.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things we could talk about. I'm really glad you came on today. So again, Aaron Toffler, the Executive Director of the Massport Community Advisory Committee, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.